Hey everybody, my apologies in advance if this is a bit of a scattered video. I still have a fever, still sick, but I do want to get this content out there. So I'm going to do my best. I'm probably going to ramble, but hopefully I'll be able to edit some of this out. So a year and a half ago, I did a video on this case that said Apple lost lawsuit against independent repair shop in Norway over unauthorized parts. What was going on in this case was that the independent repair shop owner imported parts that were supposedly refurbished with new LCDs, and he was claiming they were refurbished. Apple was claiming they were counterfeit. This case was also covered by Jason over at Vice. I make it obvious I'm not a big fan of Vice, but I am a big fan of Jason for a good reason. So he is a type of journalist that doesn't just retweet other people's headlines. He actually does the work to dig in, do the Freedom of Information requests, get the raw data, and then present the information accurately, which I appreciate, as I think that he does a good job as a journalist within this industry. So I did a video talking about this case. This was about a year and a half ago, and this got 2.4 million views. I was asked to testify once Apple appealed this case to a higher court. I was asked to then testify as a witness in that case, and once I was asked to testify, I was given access to a lot of documentation that was private to the case that was not made public. So it was not public knowledge. The local newspapers did not have it. Jason, who's a journalist in the industry, did not have it. Mac Rumors did not have it. I did not have it. Once I got access to that documentation, I learned that my perception of the case, which I'm going to explain to you in a few, was not 100% correct, and I did a follow-up video. The problem here is that while my original video got 2.4 million views, my follow-up video with corrections got 42,000 views. And this bothers me. I've talked about it in the follow-up video that one of the things that bothers me about most major news networks nowadays is they have a narrative that they're feeding you. And anytime they report something that is going to rile up their base, they let it ride even if they find out later that certain facts that they had presented were not correct once they had all the information. And once they get all the information and they go to present you the follow-up, it's typically done in a monotone voice like this for 20 seconds after the weather is done, or put on the bottom of the screen in size 8-point font that nobody reads, and that bothers me. So they're allowed to say that they technically did their follow-up, but nobody actually really knew what happened. And what bothers me here is that my original video got 2.4 million views, but then when I did the follow-up video, it got 42,000 views, which is why I'm doing another follow-up video now. Hopefully, since this one will be shorter, it will get more people to watch, and my conscience will be eased. I don't want to be a TV news network. I just don't want to do that to you. I want to actually try to present. I have my opinions. I have my biases. I have my view of the world as an independent repair shop owner, and I damn well have my own agenda. But at the same time, I want that agenda to be forwarded based on the truth and not based on bullshit. And if I do get something wrong, it really does bother me when 2.4 million views on the original, 42,000 views in the follow-up. That's not right. This deserves more attention. So it's said that he was using aftermarket and counterfeit screens, and Henrik says that no, these were refurbished, and they wound up suing him. It said the court decided that Norwegian law does not prohibit a Norwegian mobile repair person from importing mobile screens from Asian manufacturers that are 100% compatible and identical to Apple's own iPhone screens, so long as Apple's trademark is not applied to the product. It is not obvious to the court what trademark function justifies Apple's choice of imprinting the Apple logo on so many internal components, the court wrote. Huseby is largely dependent on being able to import screens with covered-up Apple logos to be able to operate in the market as a non-authorized iPhone repair technician. And he won the case, the original case, and then there was an appeal, which from everything I'm reading from the local newspapers, it does appear that he lost. Again, I'm not really good. My Norwegian's a little bit rusty. It took me about 7 years to be able to say El burro sabe más que tú, or Los zapatos son azul, so don't exactly trust my translation. I'll include links in the description down below. This was what was said. Now, when it comes to screen refurbishing, this is something that's very common in our industry. Around 2015, the supply chain to be able to get access to new originals closed up almost entirely. It was practically like overnight. It just closed up, and the only screens that were available were knockoffs. There were really bad quality knockoffs. They were really expensive knockoffs. So the issue that we have here is that now we have a choice between buying garbage knockoffs that are expensive or refurbishing originals. So how is it that you're able to refurbish a screen? Well, the part that makes the picture, the LCD, most of the time when you drop the phone, that's actually still good. The part that has a problem is the glass, the part that you touch. So throwing away the entire screen assembly when it's just the glass that's broken is kind of wasteful, it wastes money, and it also wastes the original LCD, which actually is worthwhile. You want your customers to, once they have their screen replaced, to have the highest quality closest to the original that they can. You don't want to give your customer a screen that looks lower quality or different from the original. People want an LCD that looks close to the original. Therefore, refurbished screens would have value. I used to prefer buying new, original screens whenever possible. That is what I pushed for. I actually used to suggest people buy from a company called Jack Telecom, which I can no longer in good conscience recommend. I did 2 videos on these about 5 years ago. But new originals just stopped being available at some point in time. Now, I am pretty good at board repair, but I am trash when it comes to iPhone screen refurbishing. I don't have the knowledge, I don't have the know-how, I don't have the equipment. I know nothing when it comes to that stuff. So I trust my friend Sonny, who has a shop on 33 St. Mark's Place over here. I talked about him in the Yelp video, and he also came to the Practical Board Repair School a couple of times to do refurbishing for me. So what I will do is that once I'm done replacing screens in customer phones, I will take those screens over to Sonny if the LCD is still good, and then if the LCDs are still good, he will then replace the glass or touchscreen and all that on the screen with his equipment. He'll charge me out the ass for it. Kidding. He's actually fairly reasonably priced. And then I will be able to put those screens into customer phones. This is a good thing. It allows me to give the customer a screen that was original. Again, I would prefer that everything be original and new, but if I can't get that, that's the closest to original I can get. I tell my customers that this is the closest to original I can get. I don't hide the ball from them. They're happy. I'm happy. Everyone's happy. The problem here is that what Apple was saying in this case is these screens have an Apple logo on it, which means that they're counterfeit. This bothered me because of course it's going to have an Apple logo on it. It's the original fucking LCD. The original LCD is going to have an Apple logo on it because that Apple logo is part of the original screen, which we are refurbishing. So I have a Trek Dual Sport 4 bike. It came with Shimano brakes. If I replace those brakes with Tektro brakes, do I now have to erase the Trek logo from the bike? Is it no longer a Trek Dual Sport 4? That kind of stuff is ridiculous to me. And based on everything that Apple has advocated for in the past, based on their anti-repair stance, based on how they try to control the supply chain, based on how they had a $1,200 an hour law firm come after me and ask me to take down videos because it showed the location of a fuse in their products based on half a page of a 68-page schematic, I had no reason to believe that they were not doing this for a malicious reason. Now, fast forward, and I get access to the court documentation, and it appears that there is information that I was not privy to. So it said here that these were refurbished screens, which is an argument that I am sensitive to because I do not want refurbishing to be redefined as counterfeiting, and then we get access to the documents that paint a little bit of a different story. And again, these are documents that I did not have access to until somewhere around early to mid-June. So if we go over here, we'll see that I figured this was going to be an open and shut easy case. These are refurbished. He's having screens refurbished, blah, blah, blah. So I go over to the court documentation. So there's a document here for Everglory International Electronics. And what this document is, it's a list of a bunch of LCD screens that were maybe broken, and some of them are totally useless. Some of them had original LCDs that were in good condition. Some of them had copy LCDs that were in good condition. So what they're doing here is they're telling you what each of these screens is worth so that they can buy them from you. So this is not refurbishing. This is me sending screens to China to sell them to somebody rather than send them to China to be refurbished. So here we have an invoice for iPhone screens. These are not cheap. This is $33.30 for an iPhone 6 screen in 2017. So he's not buying the cheap crap because you can get knockoffs as cheap as like $11, $13. You can see that the 6S LCDs are over $52 a piece. Not even 6S Plus, just normal 6S. So you can see that at the very least in intention, he is intending to pay top dollar for a good screen. And this is for a different company. This is from Jack Telecom. And you can see that in the email that he sent, he's actually asking for the best quality that he can get. There is a difference between sending screens to China to be refurbished by a company and then what actually happened, which is I'm going to send screens to China to sell them, and then 6 months later from a totally different company, I'm going to buy screens that say OEM. That's not what I said in my original video. I also had no way of knowing that because I did not have access to the court documentation. Next, if we look at Apple's documentation over here, their complaints about the quality of these screens is that A, the Apple logo over here they claim it is poorly printed, And the second thing they complain about is that the serial number did not originate from Apple, and one of the ways you can confirm it is because the serial number is the same on every single screen. You may say maybe Apple didn't keep track of their serials properly, or maybe they're cooking the books, but the serial number is the same on every single one. There's no reason for that unless the serial number is being put on there in some sort of fake manner, or it's just not a serial number. They just, just copy and paste something that looks like a serial and put it on every product. That is also not information that I was privy to when I did my original video. So over here, what it looks like from what I actually sent all of these pictures to Sunny and to several other refurbishing experts is they say that the LCD itself actually does appear to be original. That LCD flex from here does appear to be original from everything that they see. So that could very well be an original LCD. The Apple logo that you're seeing is actually on the glass in the frame part of it. That is the part that is typically changed when they do the refurbishing process. So that would have had an Apple logo put on it by somebody other than Apple. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't, talking out of my ass here. Maybe that Apple logo was printed and was modified or something when they did the printing. Somebody's staring at me. How's it going?
Get the fuck out of my store. We are closed.
So maybe the Apple logo had been damaged in some way, shape, or form when they do the refurbishing process, because when you're refurbishing screens, maybe you're using solvents or something to break up the adhesive. I don't know. I don't do screen refurbishing. But Sunny made it clear to me that that's not the case of what's happening here. That is the factory making the glass, putting an Apple logo there, doing a poor job of putting the Apple logo there, and putting some fake-ass serial numbers so that somebody that doesn't know any better may think that that's actually the Apple glass when it is not. And that is not something that I can stand behind. That's not something that I can advocate for. That's not something I think is a good thing. However, the issue here, or the fault here, in my opinion, is not with Henrik. It's not with the independent repair shop. It is with the factory that decided to do this in China to begin with. Now, I actually decided to ask a couple of people that are involved in the business, in addition to some of my own suppliers. So Sunny said, some people may want the Apple logo to be there, some may not. The reason that they choose to print it on every single glass is because it is easy to cover it up for the people who do not want to represent it as an Apple product, who do not want the Apple logo there. It's easier to just Sharpie it out than it is to actually put the logo there if somebody wants it after the fact. So they just put it on everything. I also had a conversation with another one of my vendors over this, and this is something that I'm going to be getting to shortly. I asked them about it. He said when the factories produce these, they print the label and the logos on them to facilitate sales in China. They are not currently able to produce batteries without the label because they must be produced in large quantities. I said for anything we purchase, it is not good enough for the logo to be crossed out. If the label is not the original label from the place that made it for Apple, it shouldn't have it on it. The people printing designed by Apple and Cupertino on batteries that are not original should be in prison, and I don't want to buy from people who do that. And he then said, okay, fine, we'll look into getting stuff from another factory. So what I'm doing there is I'm putting pressure on him. I'm drawing a line in the sand. If you're buying a display assembly from the place that made it for Apple, and it's the exact same thing, same parts, same factory, same people, they would just like to make a little bit of extra money because they're tired of making $1.36 an hour, torturing themselves, jumping out of windows, working 90 hours a week just as some spoiled brat can get himself a new MacBook Pro in time for Christmas. I don't have a problem with that because it's the original part, original everything. That's fine with me. If Apple has a problem with that factory selling to me, that's their own internal drama to work out. That's not my business. I don't mind that. If somebody is selling a part that is used and has an Apple logo on it, I'm okay with that. It's not a knockoff. It's not a counterfeit. It's an original. The logo's there because it was used. If somebody is selling a product that's refurbished and has a logo on it, I'm okay with that. It has the logo on it because it had the logo on it when it was designed and made and manufactured. You simply fix that product and are reselling it to me. I'm okay with that. Where I draw my line is when you take a part that is not the original and then you start putting Apple logos on it. Or you start fixing an original part with parts that are not original, but then you put Apple logos on that not original part that are not even well printed with fake serial numbers for no good reason other than to deceive somebody. That is where I draw my line. And it is important for me that I draw that line so that the parts that I buy and the way I do business and the way that I advocate for repair to move forward not get mixed in with these bullshit peddlers that are trying to make extra money by deceiving people. And I think it's important to do this. Many people don't like calling out the bad actors within their own social movements or within their own groups when they're trying to create change. It makes people think that you are an asshole. It makes people not want to do business with you. It makes you a pariah. But it is important to do if you are going to maintain any sort of ethics, integrity, loyalty, trust within your business, and it is important to do if you want to be at all ideologically consistent and have a conscience. If somebody is making something that is not original, it's a different factory that didn't make it for Apple. It's just some random place doing it, and they're putting some counterfeit fake-ass Apple logo on that. I don't want that shit. I don't want to buy those products. I don't want those labels. Get that shit away from me. If they're not willing to stop doing that, then I'm not willing to do business with them anymore. Because the reason I'm saying this is I can understand where Apple's coming from. I can understand where the repair shop is coming from. Because if we look at it from Henrik's point of view, he bought the most expensive screen that he possibly could. For an obsolete phone at the time, he spent over $33 in assembly. And for a newer phone at the time, for the 6S, he was spending over $52 in assembly at a time when if you wanted to buy cheap knockoffs for all these phones, you could have done so for $11 to $13. He bought top-tier screens, and for all I know, he may have seen my video from several years ago when I was saying that I think Jack Telecom is a good screen vendor, you should buy from them. For all I know, the reason that he is dealing with the bullshit that he is dealing with from Jack Telecom right now is because he saw my video back from when Jack Telecom was actually a halfway decent company. He did everything right. He did what a 5-star repair shop is supposed to do. He went to a reputable company and he asked for their best quality screens and he paid for their best quality screen. He said he wanted the highest grade of quality. He asked for the highest grade of quality. And he imported it, and he paid for it in advance, and then when he got it, it wound up being this fuckery where people are printing Apple logos on things that don't need Apple logos on it. Now, the example that I made before, where I said, if I have a Trek Dual Sport 4 and I take off the Shimano disc brakes on it, and I decide to put Tektros on it, I don't have to scrape off Trek. It's not no longer a Trek bike because I've done that. I stand by that. However, that's not the case here. Imagine if I take off the Shimano brakes on the bike, decide to put Tektro brakes on, except they're not actually Tektro brakes. I just write Tektro on the brakes that I put on that I fabricated in my backyard. That's bullshit. That's wrong. I understand Apple's side of this case, which is I don't even care if you try to make aftermarket screens for our products. Fuck off with printing our logo on them. I can understand why Apple would be pissed off here. And this is a detail that would be very easy for people to skip over. It's actually a detail that many people have skipped over because I went over this in my video, following up on my original video, and it got 42,000 views, whereas the original got 2.4 million. I don't like Apple. I'm not a fan of how they treat their customers. I'm not a fan of how they treat independent repair. I'm not a fan of the fact that they've changed the diagnostic software in their computers so that rather than say this is a sensor that failed, it gives you an error code that tells you to go to the Apple Store Genius Bar, where they're most likely going to tell you $2,000 because of a bent pin on a $1,200 used market value computer. I don't like how they do business, but that doesn't mean that I cannot understand and comprehend why they are aggravated in this case. It doesn't mean I can pat them on the back and say, good on you, thanks for making it so hard to buy shit that we have to go through and deal with these scumbags that are going to print fake logos on things just to do business and serve our customers. But I can understand why they would be aggravated at it. And it's not a detail that I think would be right to skip over. What major news outlets do is they realize that their base is not going to care if they skip over a detail that's not convenient to their narrative. They're never going to be called out for it by their base. And they would almost be better off for just skirting it under the rug or covering it for 10 seconds after the weather. I'm not okay with that. I don't want to do that. It would bother me. My conscience would not allow me to enjoy my life if I did that, which is why I think it is really important to bring up here that I think that Apple does have a point. Why are you printing an Apple logo on the glass that you're using to refurbish our products? Apple here, in this case, is not actually mad that the logo appears on the flex cable of the part that's refurbished. They're not mad at that. They're mad that the part used to refurbish the product had somebody printing an Apple logo on it that did not have to fucking be there. Now, I did have a conversation with Sonny on this, and I said, so why is it that a company may do that? If they're selling it to an individual that does not care about Apple logos. Because to be clear, American repair shops, we don't care what's printed on the product. You could print an Apple logo on the inside. You could print a lemon on the inside. You could print a Pepe on the inside. You could print a hangman on the inside. You could print an angry Nixon face on the inside. It doesn't matter. What matters is that we have trust from our customers. We tell our customers we procure the best parts that we can, and if we have a good reputation, if we have good reviews, if we have good word of mouth, they will let us put whatever the fuck it is that we deem is necessary into the phone. The customer never sees that logo. That logo is not a selling point. We don't need it. So why the fuck are they printing it on the glass? Sonny said that, just like my vendor said over here, it's to facilitate sales in China. He's also told me, in his experience, that the glass that has the poorly printed Apple logo and the fake serial number on it is glass that cracks in the same pattern under the same amount of stress as the original glass, whereas the glass that does not have the fake serial number and the crappily printed logo on it will crack very easily, and it cracks in different patterns than the original, so that for some reason, acquiring that glass that's made by whatever factory decides to make it and print the crappy fake Apple logo and fake QR code on it is actually preferable because it is higher quality, which does support my argument that Henrik's intention was to buy the best quality product for his customers, and Jack Telecom, not being a factory, being a trading company, the difference there is that trading companies don't have their own factories, they just buy stuff from factories and sell it to Americans, actually had the intention of selling him a good part. It is the factory that decided to print that bullshit logo on it that, in my opinion, deserves a flack, as well as Jack Telecom for kind of greenlighting it and just allowing them to do it for as long as they did. The problem here, and the part to focus on, is that there is a market in China for counterfeit goods. Big surprise there. There's a large market for counterfeit goods in China, and the individuals making those goods feel like it's too much work for them to separate the American market or the European market, where nobody gives a shit if there's a logo on the glass, from the Chinese market, where they can actually make more money by putting that little Apple stamp on the glass. And what we need to start doing as repair businesses in our industry is not just hold suppliers accountable for quality, for price, for RMA or return policy, but also for this logo shit the same way I was. It's hard enough in our business to get parts that are of good quality. It is very difficult to get things that are good. It's very difficult to find vendors who are trustworthy so that when you wire them $20,000, they just don't run off with it. It is very much so the wild, wild west in the parts business. So once people get parts that are of good quality from a vendor that will actually take them back if they don't work, most people don't bother caring about the logos thing if it's already been crossed out with a Sharpie. We don't look at it. It's not even something that occurs to us. I don't scan the QR codes on the screens that I receive. I don't look at the logos or writing on the labels under a microscope because it's irrelevant to me. What's relevant to me is, does the part work well for the customer? Does it look good? Does it feel good? Does it work the same? I don't look at them under a microscope. If we are going to represent the repair business in a good light, if we are going to be good advocates for what it is that we want, which is the ability to import parts, the ability to repair these products, the ability to find parts of these products, then we can't be supporting fuck shit in our business just because it's on our side of the aisle. Jack Telecom, all these companies, they're the companies that are supplying us with parts. They're the companies that are making our businesses possible. That does not mean that we don't call them out when they do stupid shit like this. And this is stupid, stupid shit. This is stupid, sloppy crap. There is no reason to put an Apple logo on the glass that is being used to refurbish an Apple screen. No reason whatsoever, unless you are trying to misrepresent that part to somebody in China. And if you want to do that in China, fine. That's your business. You do you. Let Chinese government and Apple's Chinese office and Apple's Chinese police and legal whatever deal with that shit. That's on you. Don't bring that shit over into the United States or Europe or other markets. I don't want to deal with that. Just because you're trying to misrepresent the product as an Apple product in China doesn't mean that I want evidence of that when I import it. Take that shit off. It's not good enough anymore that you put a Sharpie over the logo or the label. I want you to remove it. And if your factory is not willing to remove it, then we as repair shops in the United States or in Europe need to start being willing to say, if your factories are not willing to do that, then I'm not willing to give you money anymore, because this matters to me, because integrity matters to me, because having ideological consistency matters to me. I would not like it if somebody else did that to me, and I am not, and even as much as I despise and dislike the way Apple treats the customer, since I would not like if somebody did that to me, I'm not going to buy from a company that does that to Apple. If you want to refurbish screens, that's totally fine. If you want to refurbish them with glass that's similar to Apple's or almost identical to Apple's, that's totally fine. Don't put Apple's fucking logo on it if it didn't come from them. That's wrong. It's difficult to do this. It's difficult to call out the people within your own movements or within your own industry that are doing something that is incorrect. And here, I think personally, I think Jack Telecom should be held liable for this. I think that Jack Telecom choosing to put these fake-ass, poorly printed Apple logos and fake repeated serial numbers on the glass of the screens that they're selling to Henrik, I think they should have to pay the fine if Henrik winds up having to destroy these screens and pay a fine to Apple. Not Henrik. I think they should be held accountable, and I think that individuals who are purchasing parts from Jack Telecom should say, you know what? I'll purchase from you again once you pay Henrik Huseby's bill. And by the way, stop putting fake logos in your products. That's hard to do. It's easy to point out the villain that you hate. It's easy to point out the villain that so often is the actual villain, Apple. But here, Apple's kind of got a point. Now, once the logo is covered up, was it being represented as an Apple product? Henrik and his attorney say no. Norwegian law, the first time in the case, said no. It was not being represented as an Apple product. Henrik's website, if you go to archive.org, does not say that he was ever advertising them as Apple products. He was never advertising them as an Apple screen, and the logo was crossed out. So, for the most part, he was cleared in the original case. And I also don't think Henrik can be expected to know what's in the box before he buys it. Small repair shops do not have the time or the budget to fly over to China, go to the factory, inspect the ship before they buy it. We buy it. If it's good, we use it. If it's if it's bad or crap, we file chargebacks, or if we wired money, we just cry and then throw the product away. But independent repair shops, the burden to tell if it's counterfeit, it's difficult for that to be on us. That burden should be on the people in China who are selling it to us, especially if they know that this is going on. And I do strongly feel that if you are somebody who buys from Jack Telecom, that you should say, oh, by the way, I'd love to make this order from you, but you send stuff with fake logos on it to Henrik. Henrik had to pay out the ass for a fine, so until you reimburse him and show us that you reimbursed him, I'm not buying from you anymore. Obviously, with the way the legal system works in China, it is silly for us to expect the Chinese government and the Chinese legal system to care about this type of issue. When I say held responsible, I do not mean that Apple or even Norwegian lawmakers should be going after a company in China. What I'm saying is that we, as Jack Telecom's customer base, as Jack Telecom's customers, should be holding them accountable and responsible by telling them if they don't pay Henrik Huseby's legal fees and whatever penalty he got if he loses this case, that we are never buying from them ever again. Make sure that it affects them in the pocketbook. Because if we, the customers, make sure it affects them in the pocketbook, then they will stop doing these types of things. And I strongly, strongly believe that Jack Telecom should be held liable, should be held accountable and responsible in a way that affects their bottom line by us personally for what they've done to Henrik Huseby. Now, many of you may be saying things like, well, why do you have to buy from people in China to begin with if you want to fix iPhones? Why are you doing that? Why are you just not going to Apple and becoming an Apple authorized service provider like you fucking should? You knockoff, counterfeit peddler, independent repair shop owner, piece of shit. That's a good question, which is why I did this video a few years ago titled, What Does Authorized Repair Do? Let's find out. And in this video, I go over what authorized repair does, and I'll let you listen. So I have timestamps to everything here. And over here, I went to an authorized service center that was listed on Apple.com as servicing iPhones. So if you go to Apple.com, you can find repair shops for all the different types of things. Like, you know, ones that are certified for Mac repair, ones that are certified for iPhone repair. So in the video, you'll see at one point, I went through Apple's website and I found shops and I called them. So at 32 minutes, let's listen to what it is Apple will do if you call up one of their Apple authorized service providers and say, I would like an iPhone screen fixed. Can you go to the store and have your iPhone screen fixed by that Apple authorized service provider? This is going to be good. Let's get some others in here. Okay, I got to put on my robe and my wizard hat. Let's get on my robe and my wizard hat.
There we go.
Calling Core, Tampa-based Apple specialists.
Hi, I was just curious if you did an iPhone repair.
What kind of iPhone repair?
I have an iPhone 6.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I broke it. I'm sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Like cracked screen or like not turn it on or what's going on with it?
Cracked screen, pretty much.
crack screen. So those we all have to send out to Apple. So if you're looking to, the only place that's going to do an on-site repair is going to be the Apple Store.
Are you fucking kidding me? Oh, so you're okay. So just for the iPhones, so you don't do the iPhone screen repair there?
That's correct. Yeah, I can do like batteries and some components inside of there, but
which one of you
if there's anything wrong with the screen and all, I have to send those out to Apple.
Did I not choose the wrong fucking drop down? Okay, so what do you know what the cost and the turnaround time would be for that? Like worst case scenario for the crack screen?
Crack screen. Let's see here. It's an iPhone 6.
Yeah, it's an iPhone 6. It's not the 6S.
Okay. Let's see.
All these people do is mail forwarding, as Uraz says in chat. This is mail forwarding.
So turnaround time is usually about a week, and then iPhone
1
6
week.
screen only repair through me is $149.
Okay, it's $149. All right, I did this.
1 week. What they're doing is they're mailing the phone off to Apple. Many authorized repair facilities are not even able to get these screens because there was a rollout of this thing called the Horizon machine. You had to have the Horizon machine in order to do the screen replacements. If you didn't have it, you didn't even have an option to buy it. It was a pilot program. So for long periods of time, you could actually be an authorized repair shop and you could not fix an iPhone in your own effing store. Jessa has had her 8-year-old children do charge port and screen replacements on phones, but a place that has paid all the money and gone through all the testing to become an Apple authorized service provider, in many cases is not even able to replace your iPhone screen. There is a reason that people choose to not become Apple authorized because they don't want to be mailing facilities. They'd like to actually perform repairs, and they'd like to be able to offer repairs to customers that they're going to say yes to. How's it going? I have more people that are staring at me, so I'm just going to stare back at you. Hi. Hi. Please get the fuck out of my store. You're not going to go away, are you? Okay, they went away. They don't want to be mailing facilities. They would like to actually fix things. If I tell a customer their screen repair will be done in a half hour, they'll be happy. If I tell them an hour and a half, slightly less happy. If I tell them 3 to 4 hours, very unhappy. If I tell them a day, they're leaving. If I tell them a week, they are going to laugh at me because an iPhone screen repair can be done in 10 to 20 minutes by an 8-year-old child. It is not a difficult thing to do. It is very, very easy to say you should become an authorized service provider, but it is very difficult to sit through this 48-minute video where you're told that you have to mail the phone off and have the entire thing replaced and have the data erased from it if you have something stuck in your headphone jack. It's hard to listen to that, the truth of what it is like to actually become an Apple authorized service provider. And this is where I think that Apple creates the situation that they wind up suing people like Henrik for. People like Henrik, people like myself, people like Jessa, people like Mark Schaefer, people like Chris Long or Michael Oberdick or Tim Herman. We don't want to buy from the Jack Telecoms of the world. We don't want to buy from random fucking scammers who 1 week will sell us great stuff and then next week sell us crap stuff that we have to constantly wade through, constantly quality assurance, quality control, and constantly deal with stupid shit like people who have a fucking hard-on for printing logos on shit when that logo is not there. We don't want to deal with those people. We would rather buy screens from Apple's actual vendors, or we would actually rather buy the screens at Apple, even if they cost more money. We would like to be able to do that, but we can't. Apple goes out of their way to make it as difficult as humanly possible to do this. If I want to buy an ISL 9240 from any of the vendors that actually sell an ISL 9240, and I'm going to go into this in a later video, a chip that very commonly goes bad in the charging circuit of the new touch bars, I can't do it. They'll say, sorry, this is only meant to be sold to one vendor. The reason that we have to go through donor boards and dumpster dive through crap in order to find these chips or parts is because Apple makes it hard. So they knowingly make it difficult to work on their products. They make it to the point where their own service providers are quoting people 1 to 2 weeks for something that an 8-year-old could do in 20 minutes. And then once they've made it difficult, then they use the legal system to harass the people who are put in this position to begin with. I understand where people are coming from who still have their middle fingers up for Apple Inc. as a result of what they do here. But if you're going to have that opinion, if you're going to say in this case that Apple has 100% fault, and the factory in China that's printing that Apple logo on everything willy-nilly, and all the individuals involved that do that have 0% fault, I think at the very least you should be fully informed as to what was going on in the case, so that if Henrik winds up losing this case, you have a better understanding of why he lost this case, and a better understanding of how going into the future things could be done better so that this doesn't happen. So what I think needs to happen within our industry is, as I've said before, I think every single person who's ordering parts from China needs to sit their vendor down the same way I sat my vendor down and have a difficult conversation with them and say, listen, I understand that we have a good thing going. I understand that you sell me parts that work, I pay for them, and that you have a supply chain that works for you. The thing is, we need to destroy the supply chain and start from scratch if your factories are not willing to stop printing fake-ass logos on shit, if they are printing fake-ass logos on shit. If you're selling me something that is an actual original part that you ripped out of a MacBook or you ripped out of an iPhone and it has an Apple logo on it, I'm okay with that because that's an original part. If the same factory that made it for Apple is also making it for you and now it has an Apple logo on it, I don't really even care about that because that's an original part. If a company is printing out their own aftermarket shit that is made differently, using different parts, different materials, different everything, and they put an Apple logo on it, it's no longer good enough that you simply cover that logo up. You go to that factory and tell them to stop putting that logo there, and if they're not willing to do that, then stop fucking buying from them. This is a difficult thing to do. We're creating a pain point. We're creating a pressure point in order to stop someone from doing something that is wrong so that we can retain our moral and ethical integrity and do what is right. That is hard. That is something that people are not going to want to do. People don't like change. People don't like issuing ultimatums to their vendors. Vendors don't like issuing ultimatums to their factories. But at the end of the day, if we're going to be a moral and ethical industry, if we're going to be an industry that I can actually support, if I can, for me to actually be able to get behind people like Henrik Huseby and fully champion their case, rather than lukewarmly as I am now after getting all the information, then everything needs to be done above board. And that is important going forward, and that's not going to change unless every single person in the repair industry has that difficult conversation with that vendor the same way I said I had that difficult conversation with my vendor, where I said everything that I just said. And again, if the Apple logo was there because it's an original Apple part, that's one thing. If somebody's printing their own knockoff bullshit-ass logo on there, that shit has to end. And if they're not willing to end it because they want to be able to sell stuff in China, that's cool, but you're not selling that to me in the United States anymore. And if enough repair shops in Europe, in the United States, and every other country where independent repair is a popular thing, decide to start issuing that ultimatum, that factory in China is then going to be forced to start producing things more ethically, and they're going to be forced to change. Because the sad thing is, they're not going to change from my one request. I asked my vendor, I said, can you get them to stop printing that logo on shit when we buy it if that logo was not there originally because it was not the original part? And he said they're not going to do it because they make it en masse and they want to sell it to people who want to buy it with the logo. They're not going to make that change just for him because he's a small buyer. It means that every large buyer is going to have to start making this a priority before it happens. And it's not going to change anything. It's not going to change the quality of the part. It's not going to change the price. It's just an extra thing that you're going to have to add on to your long to-do list, which is why a lot of people are not going to do it. But I'm urging people to make this a priority when you order parts from your vendors. Tell them it's not just the quality that matters to me. It's not just the price that matters to me. It's not just the ability to return it or RMA it if it's defective that matters to me. It is whether or not they are printing bullshit fake logos on the crap that they are selling you. And I am looking through the things that I get from every single vendor from now on because I wish to remain ideologically consistent here. And if I get something that says that it is an aftermarket or something, and they say it's aftermarket, and I see an Apple logo on it, I'm not paying that vendor. Seriously, it is important. Sorry this video is so long-winded and everything, but also sorry for repeating this content. If you already heard me talk about this in the follow-up video that I did here, my mouse is not working. Piece of shit. Much of what I said in this video is essentially the same thing I said in that video, but as I said, this is bothering me that my original video, before I had all the information, has 2.4 million views, and the follow-up video, once I have all the information, gets 42,000 views. There are many things that Apple does that bother me. The ways that they design their products bother me. The way they treat the consumer bothers me. A lot about their corporate culture and how they do business bothers me. But when I present to you with the reasons as to why I dislike something or why I think something is wrong, I want that reason to be based on objective facts and reason. And anytime it is not based on objective facts or reason, or anytime those objective facts or reason are incorrect, even if they go against what it is that I'm saying or promoting, That doesn't mean it's right that you don't hear it. And if I tell you it and only 42,000 of the 2.4 million listen to it, it's not right that I be okay with that and not keep hammering it home until the actual truth and all of the information comes out, so that if you want to side with Apple, if you want to side with Henrik, or if you are in the middle, that's fine, but it should be based on the truth. Apple is the world's first trillion-dollar company. At a time where there is a height of anti-rich, fuck the billionaire class, fuck the large corporation sentiment. Many people that used to like Apple are turning against Apple for the way they treat their customers, for the way their products continue having new flaws every year that they will only admit once there's some sort of class action lawsuit or lots of media attention. And a lot of people have this fuck Apple sentiment because of how they treat their customers, how they treat independent repair shops, how they treat people who just want to buy something like an ISL 9240 to fix defects in their own products. So it would be very easy for me to sweep this under the rug. If Henrik loses this case, it would be very easy to just continue riding that train because the original video got 2.4 million views and the follow-up got 42,000. It would be very easy for me to sweep these inconvenient facts that go against the fact that the repair industry is so lovely and great and perfect all the time. It would be easy to sweep that under the rug. The hard thing is to look at the people that are on your side, that are on your movement, and say, you're on my side, you're doing something wrong, change that. It's hard to do that. And it's also something where if I don't point out flaws in the information that I've presented you, if I don't tell you when I've gotten something wrong, then how the fuck can I expect you to trust anything I have to say when I criticize Apple or how they do business? Further, if I'm not willing to clean house within my own industry, or at least make an effort to clean house within my own industry, then how can I expect Tim Cook or the executives at Apple to clean house within theirs? It doesn't work that way. And if I want to earn your trust, earn your respect, or at the very least earn your ear when I bring up that I think Apple has done something wrong, then the only way I believe I can earn that is if I tell you when I think people in our industry, or myself, or I have also done something wrong. Which is why I think it's important that I do this follow-up again. I've done this follow-up once, but that follow-up that I did not even get 5% the viewership of the original video. That's not good enough. It's not good enough for me to simply issue a correction if nobody actually saw it. That's it for today. As always, I hope you learned something.